Hello everybody, this is Tekka. In this video, what we are going to be doing is setting up Nextcloud. And we're going to be doing this with Nextcloud All-in-One, which this is a relatively new product. I believe it was announced with the Nextcloud Hub 2 update, which that alone introduced a whole bunch of really cool updates, features, improvements, just all around a fantastic release. Now, personally, I've set up Nextcloud a number of ways. I've done the manual install where you set up your databases, the Apache server, and everything like that yourself. And I've used the snap package. Now, with using Nextcloud all-in-one compared to the other installation methods, I found one, the performance is substantially better, especially on something like a Office server, whether if you're going to be using Nextcloud Office or only Office. And in terms of compatibility, the Nextcloud all-in-one through Docker seems to be a little bit better than the snap package, because the snap package does have issues with some of the plugins that use, for example, FFmpeg. Now, what we're going to be doing in this video is setting it up on Linode, the sponsor of today's video, but majority of the steps in this can be replicated on a home lab, Raspberry Pi, another cloud service provider, whatever it may be. And I actually do have all the steps right here. So if you go ahead and go down to the link in the description, you could go ahead and easily copy and paste all of these commands. So with that, for Linode, if you use the link in the description, you get a $100 60-day credit, so you could follow along with this right now if you would like to. But with that, what we're going to be doing is setting this up on a Ubuntu server, and we're just going to use the latest 22.4 LTS, which is a relatively new release. For region, I'm going to select what is closest to me, which that's this California server. For our size, I'm going to go with the Linode 2 gig, which gives us 2 gigs of RAM and 50 gigs of storage, which I honestly recommend this 2 gig plan over the 1 gig. It will just run a little bit better. And for me, on my actual instance I use on a daily basis, I'm using the dedicated 4 gig plan. So from there, we could go and scroll down. We could give it a label. I'm going to call this Nextcloud.hopkey.net. That's the domain name that I'm going to be installing this on. Give yourself a good root password. And if you do need to set up Ubuntu server on some local hardware, I do have a separate video going over the typical Ubuntu server installation. So with all that, looks good. Let's go ahead and create our Linode. And now our Linode is being created. It's provisioning. So I'm going to be doing this with a domain name. You don't have to do it with a domain name, but I want to be able to have an SSL certificate and all that. So if you're going to skip the domain name thing for now, that's completely fine. I will have timestamps below so you can skip around to the sections of this video that you actually need. So with that, in Linode, we have domains right here. I'm going to open this up in a new tab, and you can see the domains I already have set up. You can't purchase domains through Linode, but you could go to Namecheap, GoDaddy, whatever it may be, buy your domain there, and then link the name servers to the proper name servers for Linode, which I will have on the screen now. And below, I will link to guides to help you set all this up properly. Once you do have your domain name in here, we're going to go over to it. So I'm going to click on hopkey.net. These are those name servers. And what I'm going to want to do is add some A records. So I'm going to go back over to our Nextcloud instance we just created, copy that IP address, and then I'm going to add an A record. And this is going to be our subdomain. So this is going to be nextcloud.hopkey.net. Paste in the IP address, hit save. And now this step's not completely necessary, but you can see here when you use the Linode API, it does the IPv6 stuff automatically for you. So we might as well set that up too. So we're going to go over here again, type in Nextcloud once again. And then I'm going to copy the IPv6 address and paste that in right there. Click save. So now we have our subdomain completely set up. Now, if you did just link your domain to Linode, it might take anywhere from 30 minutes to a day to completely allow the DNS servers to propagate. So just keep note of that, and later in this video I will show you how to check to see if that is ready. So over here on our Linode dashboard, we can launch the Lish console to make sure that it's completely booted up. And right here you can see Ubuntu localhost, it's ready to go. So we can copy this SSH access for the root account, open up our terminal, and from here we're going to go ahead and connect. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger than that. Paste this in, hit enter. This is our server, so it's safe. I'm going to say yes, and then we're going to type in our password. And now before we actually set up Docker, the Nextcloud instance and all that, there's some general server administrative stuff that we're going to want to do to make sure everything just works properly. and is as secure as possible. So the first thing we're going to do is create a limited sudo user. So to do this, we just want to type in add user and the username that you want to choose. For this instance, I'm going to go with Brandon. Hit enter. Here, you're going to want to make sure, give it a strong, complicated, and secure password. And now it's going to ask for some basic information about yourself. If you don't have other accounts or other people accessing the server, this really doesn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit enter to skip these for now. Hit enter to confirm that's correct. And now with that user created, what we're going to want to do is add this user to the sudo users. And to do this, we're just going to type in usermod -a for add to the group, and the group is going to be sudo, and the user is going to be my username of Brandon. So now with that added, what we could do is actually type in exit to exit out of that SSH instance. And now I'm going to go ahead and change this to the username I just created. Reconnect, type in our password, and now you can see I am in this sudo user. So now we can go ahead and update our server. Very important to make sure we have all the latest security patches. So sudo apt update, and we can do a sudo apt upgrade. Type in your password. Make sure you type it in correct. All right, and we can see here there are some very important new packages that are going to be installed, and we can see that there are 11 standard security updates. So of course, we're going to hit enter to confirm the installation of all these updates. Now for this specific update, it looks like there is a new kernel available. We should consider rebooting. We will be rebooting a little bit later. So for now, we'll hit OK, tab, and OK. So now what we're going to do is check our host name. Our host name right there is localhost. We can already see it. But if you do want to check, you could just type in hostname. And we're going to go ahead and edit that and change that to our domain name we're going to be using. So to do this, we're going to want to do sudo nano-etc and go into our host name file. Here you can see localhost. What we're going to want to do is change this simply to nextcloud.hopkey.net or whatever domain name you are choosing to use. So Control O to output that and exit. Now before I reset the service and restart our server, we're going to want to go ahead and change the time zone. So type in time date CTL, hit enter to see if it's already set to the right time zone, and you can see right now I'm at UTC +0, which that is not correct for what I want. If you want to see a list of all the time zones, you could just type in time date CTL list dash time zones, and then it will give you the full list. And if you hold down enter, you can kind of scroll through and find whatever it is that you're looking for, which for me, I'm going to want to change this to America, Los Angeles. So Control C to get out of there and enter. So we're going to want to go sudo time date CTL set dash time zone America Angeles. And another important note, if you're doing this on like a Linode, make sure it's the same time zone with whatever server you selected. It's just best practice. Hit enter. Okay, good to go. And now with all that, what we can do is a sudo reboot. This is going to disable our connection, reboot our server, so it should save all these changes. And while we wait for it to reboot, this is where we could actually check to see if our DNS has propagated and is set up correctly. So we can use the ns lookup command, and we're going to do nextcloud.hopkey.net, hit enter, and you can see we have our IP address right there, so everything is set up. If it doesn't work, for example, if I messed up the IP address, it's going to say server can't find that specific domain name that I looked for, but since we got this answer back, we're good to go. Now, as far as rebooting our server, you can always go over to your Nextcloud dashboard and launch the Lish console to see its progress on actually rebooting, because this will show you the actual prompt and terminal before you have SSH access. So there we go, Ubuntu 22.04, and you can see our new host name right there has saved properly. So I'm going to close this out and re-log into our SSH instance. But this time, what we can do is just type in the domain name. So that will be nextcloud.hopkey.net. Hit enter. This is our server, so we can say yes and then type in our password for the Brandon user or whatever user you went ahead and created. And now you can see here, if I type in hostname, we do have the proper hostname, and then the @Nextcloud is that shortened hostname that we added to that host's file. So now what we're going to do is disable logging into SSH via root. This is actually a little security tip I learned from Learn Linux TV. I do recommend you check out that channel, and I'll be linking to one of his videos down below going over some of the things to better secure your servers. Highly recommend that, but this is one of them. So we're going to do sudo nano etc ssh and then the sshd underscore config file. Type in your password. Oh, screwed up. Make sure it's actually ssh. There we go. Okay, so now what we're going to do is go ahead and scroll down until you see the permit root login or login. We're going to want to say no to that. Save it. Make sure you didn't skip the step where we created that limited sudo user before you do this, because you want to be able to log in. So Control O to save, Control X. And now what we need to do is restart that service. So sudo systemctl, and we're going to restart sshd. Hit enter, and we're good to go. We shouldn't be able to log in with the root now, so that's helpful. And now what we're going to do is open up some ports. Now I'm going to open up all the ports that Nextcloud can use. You probably don't have to open up all of them if you're going to just use an IP address, for example. If you want to see more information specifically on all the ports and everything, it is on this GitHub page. But with that, first let's make sure our firewall is actually enabled. So it's sudo UFW here on Ubuntu. If you chose a different distribution, this may be different. Go ahead and look up whatever applications your distro is using. So UFW enable, just like that. It may disrupt SSH connections. It shouldn't. So we're going to say yes. And now it's active and enabled on startup. So now what we're going to do is UFW or sudo UFW allow, and we're going to open up some of these ports. So the first one is port 80. This is just your main Nextcloud container, and we're going to open up the TCP port. And most of these are going to be TCP ports. So hit enter. The rules have been added. And now what we're going to do is add the 443 port. And this is going to be the Apache container. So hit enter. And now what we're going to do is the 8080 port. And this one for sure needs to be opened if you're going to be doing this just with your IP address. Hit enter. And now what we're going to do is the 80 and 443 TCP port. And this one for sure needs to be opened if you're going to be doing this through a domain name and you want to generate an SSL certificate. So hit enter. And now what we're going to do is open up the proper ports for the Nextcloud Talk instance. And that is going to be 3, 4, 7, 8. And we're not going to do TCP or anything because we're just going to open both of the ports or both of the connection types. So at this point, we've done everything we need to do to set up our server to get ready for the installation. And now it's time for the actual installation. This is very easy. We're just going to install Docker first. And we're going to do this with the curl for the getdocker.com. Hit enter, and then this little script is going to run through everything that it needs to do to properly install Docker. And it's actually what's recommended over here on the Nextcloud all-in-one GitHub page. Going forward, all the information that I'm going to talk about in this video is simply here. All right, so we are now good to go. Docker is installed. So to run this, what we're going to do is copy and paste this command right here, sudo docker run, and this is going to be the Nextcloud all-in-one master container. Restart always, so if you restart your server, it will start up Nextcloud. Then we have our ports for 80, 8080, and 8043, all the volumes, and this is going to be under the all-in-one latest. You could change latest if you'd like to, but this is what I would recommend you go with. Refer to that GitHub page for more information. Hit enter, and now it's going to go ahead and pull all the files it needs, extract them, and then boot up that Docker container or multiple containers. You'll see what I'm talking about. All right, so there we go. This is what it's going to look like when the actual Docker container is starting up. And then you'll see right here, initial startup of Nextcloud all-in-one is complete. You can go either to the internal IP of this server at port 8080, or you could go to the domain that points to this server at port 8443. So depending on what you decided to do, you're going to want to pick one of these. For us, we picked nextcloud.hopkey.net. So we're going to head over to that at port 8443. If we scroll down here, we can kind of monitor to see what it's doing and if there's any errors or warnings, but based on everything we've set up thus far, there should not be. And again, if you want more details of what we're doing right now, you can find this right here And if you're doing this on a Raspberry Pi, this is the Docker command that you're going to want to use, or really any other ARM CPU. So with that, I'm going to open up a new tab, go to nextcloud.hopkey.net at port 8443, hit enter. Oh, we're going to want to make sure we go to the HTTPS at that address, hit enter. If we do look at the console over here, you can probably see it doing a lot of different stuff. But now this is important. This is your password to log into your all-in-one instance. Give this a copy, Control C. For me, I'm actually going to go ahead and paste it into this notepad right here, open up a new tab, Control V, because I do not want to lose that. And you can change this if you want to, but I generally just leave it what it gives me. You could save this as an encrypted file, print it, have a hard copy, whatever you need to do. So with that copied, we're going to want to open the Nextcloud all-in-one login, paste in our password, go to login, and then here is our setup dashboard. So if you haven't have a backup, you could go ahead and import that here. This is our first time setting it up, so we do not. But what we're going to want to do simply is under the new all-in-one instance, we're going to want to type in our domain name. So for this, it was nextcloud.hopkey.net. And if you didn't open up your ports properly and you hit submit, you're going to get a little error message right here. So if you do get an error at this point, that is what is wrong. But for here, let's hit submit. And now we have some additional options. Now here is where you want to pick either only Office or Collabora, which this is the Nextcloud Office instance, or I believe the base is actually LibreOffice, so it's super cool. But only Office is also an option if you do prefer that. You're going to want to select one or the other, and only Office is only supported on x80 or x64. Just so I can show you what the defaults are. I like only Office. I almost would select this, but I just want to kind of go with the defaults for this video. Hit Save Changes, and now once we click Start Containers, we're going to get this progress bar here. Now this takes a long time, so if it even takes more than like 5 minutes, that's fine, but it should automatically redirect you to where you need to go. All right, so that took it a little bit. We have our containers here, and these are all the different separate Docker containers. We have Apache, Database, Nextcloud, and all the others. If you want to here, you can stop the containers. Up here, we have our initial Nextcloud username and password. So I'm gonna grab this password real quick, give that a copy. We have the options for our backup and restore. We can change the password of this all-in-one dashboard right here if we would like to, and additional options which we cannot change because it is currently running. So what we're going to do is click right here, open your Nextcloud, opens up a new tab. Now the very first time everything loads, it's going to be a little sluggish, but after everything's loaded at least one time, you're going to have some pretty good performance. So I'm going to paste in that password, check it real quick, make sure there's no spaces or nothing. Good. Log in. Give that a save, and here we go. We are now in our very own Nextcloud instance on the node using the all-in-one Docker image. And here we go. Let's go ahead and skip through this. You can read all this if you'd like to. And it's cool because you'll get the option to install all these apps. It all works properly. I've been using the Docker image for about a week now on my official Tech Hut domain name. So if I start using Nextcloud, the one thing I'd recommend you do is I actually didn't, but if you want to change the default password it gives you, you could go into settings, go into security and change it there, as well as any other settings you'd like to change throughout here. Now, the one thing I want to point out is if you install this on Snap, or even if you do a manual installation, a lot of the times the Office servers or like the writer replacements or things like that is super sluggish. Like, you'll hit a key or you'll hit a letter and there's like a half-second delay from where it actually gets printed. But in this case, if I go ahead and open up this document, this is going to open up in Nextcloud Office. Again, we have the only Office option if we would like. Here is a little welcome, so we can kind of explore through this if we would like to. And it's saying everything is spelt wrong. So that's one thing I'm going to have to change in my settings. But you can see here, if I start typing, it's instant. There's barely any delay. It's basically the same performance as like Google services or even like Microsoft 365 or 360. I forgot the specific numbers. Anyways, it performs remarkably well. And when you have multiple people in here, it's synced fairly instantaneously. So like before, it was laggy, it was choppy. You would be writing fast and it would be skipping along. This performs really, really well. And that's it for the basic installation. If you'd like more Nextcloud guides on things like setting up shared group folders and getting deck to work right and a whole lot more, leave some comments down below. And again, anything you saw in this video, there will be a text version of it linked down below. And lastly, thank you to the sponsor Linode. I'm doing the ad read at the end because we used the service throughout the video. But Linode is fantastic. There are a ton of one-click installers, including a Nextcloud one if you don't want to go through everything we just did. However, I personally prefer the performance of using Docker. With Linode, you could set up various game servers, websites. I use it to host my very own Nextcloud instance as well as techhut.tv. And like I mentioned earlier, if you use that link in the description, you can get a $100 60-day credit. So, with all that, I do hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have an absolutely beautiful day, and goodbye.